I'm going to introduce Councilwoman Tracy Park, who has a few things to say to us. So Tracy, you're up.
Thank you, Sue. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me tonight. It's really wonderful to see so many familiar faces. I can't believe that we are already in April and that we just in the last week hit the 90-day mark since these fires that just cataclysmically changed our district and our city. We have seen really incredible process so far, from the restoration of the utilities to the debris removal going much, much more quickly than we had initially initially expected, to actually breaking ground on the first new home in the Palisades just this week. So really there is progress around every corner. My team and I have been involved in every meeting, every event, every discussion around what's happening with recovery, because we really want to make sure that your feedback and your perspectives are being heard and then baked into every conversation I'm having with government agencies and stakeholders about the rebuild. I'm just incredibly grateful because I see so many of you engaging with each other, with my team, bringing ideas and feedback and energy and momentum. And I know that Maryam's presentation tonight is going to be one of many examples of the very thoughtful work that you all are putting into deciding how we are going to recover and rebuild. We, as a council office, are here to assist and to move forward with the platform and the policy and the priorities that are most important to you. We are here to help bring city agencies and experts to the table to support your community-based plan for the rebuild. This is a mission that you as residents should be driving. And so we are here to support that effort to bring our city departments and our essential crews into the Palisades to support the work that you're going to be doing. I don't want to take up too much time this evening. I know you have a very packed agenda. I also did want to share with you, I am actually in Hawaii for the next few days. I'm going to be meeting with the Hawaii governor to talk about fire recovery, and then I'm going to be in Lahaina on the ground with FEMA, looking at some of the issues that they are facing in their rebuilding. I am particularly interested in the ocean and environmental impacts. In Lahaina, like we've seen in the Palisades, there were a lot of heavy rains immediately after the fires. And so there's been a lot of work and research here related to the environmental impact. So that is one of the many, many things that I'm going to be studying in the few days that I'm here. I will tell you that in my visits with Santa Rosa and Paradise and other communities that have experienced devastation and have to go through such a Herculean effort to rebuild, we pick up best practices, ideas, we learn from others. Many of the initial 24 motions that I introduced on our first council meeting after the fires were informed by other communities that have experienced what you all are going through and will be going through for the foreseeable future. So I will keep you updated on my progress here and what I'm learning, and I will be back on the ground in the Palisades next week, and look forward to seeing you all in person when I'm back. So with that, thank you again. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Sue.
All right. Thank you so much. How's Hawaii?
Well, I have only been on the ground about an hour and a half. It's cloudy, but it's Hawaii. It's beautiful. You just can't
go. Okay. We were going to go next to our presentation from Haggerty, and I don't know if they are on the call. If they are, I wish one of them would say something. Either Harrison Newton or Tracy Phillips, are you on the call?
I don't see them in your attendee list.
No, I don't see them either. So maybe we'll switch it up a little bit. Would that be okay with you, Maryam?
Oh, sure. You want me to talk?
Can you
Absolutely.
jump in? Okay,
Um,
so,
Sue, do you mind if I just note for the record, Rick McGay is here,
Right.
Courtney, Macker
Right,
is here,
Macker.
Jessica Rogers are here. So
Yeah.
these are all people that weren't called originally, but they're here.
right, right. I saw them come in. Thank you, Chris. Okay, so, instead of having, our consulting group Haggerty come on first, we're going to have, the Palisades Recovery Coalition led by Maryam Czar. Come in, Maryam has a presentation to give us about a recovery project that she's been working really, really hard on with so many people. So Maryam, if you want to go ahead, are you gonna want to share a screen or not?
No, I wasn't planning on it.
Okay.
So we spoke, and I can, if there's, if there's engagement, if everybody decides they want to do more, talk more, hear more, we can also set up a different time to do more, talk more, hear more. I'm just going to give you the overview.
Well, I
Um,
believe the link was in the agenda,
The link was in the agenda. So
so
I'm going
anyone can see it
to
there.
yeah, I'm going to go over, I mean, I can present something, but don't worry. I'm just going to talk to you guys, and I
Okay.
beg you not to highlight me for everybody.
Oh, you don't? Okay. Okay.
All right, everyone. So most of you, many of you, I know, most of you, oh, Harrison Newton's coming in, by the way.
Oh, good. Okay.
You want to still defer
Thank
them?
you. Yeah. No. Go ahead. You go
Okay.
ahead.
All right, everyone. So I'm Maryam Czar. I'm the chair emeritus of PPCC. I was the two-time chair. Under Chris Spitz's leadership, we created the Task Force on Homelessness. I was the founding chair, and then I incorporated it into the Task Force on Homelessness. And I mention that because that was this community's response to a crisis. At the time, it was a crisis of homelessness. Today, it's a different crisis. Much more pronounced and much more far-reaching, but it's a crisis. And as Tracy just said, it's going to be this community that has to come together for a response, because there's very little support outside of us and our own, sorry, I keep clicking the admit. There's very little support outside of just our own ingenuity. And those of you who've been to the PRC Recovery Coalition meetings have probably gathered that. We have Tracy Park, who is our ace in the hole over at City Council. We have a city that has a lot of resources, but so far, we haven't seen a whole lot of resources brought to bear in Pacific Palisades specifically for the building, right, for the rebuilding. So how did the Palisades Recovery Coalition come about? In early February, when the mayor appointed Steve Soberoff as the chief recovery officer, I gave him a call, and I knew him back from the Task Force on Homelessness days, because back then he was the president of the police commission. And when we wanted to bring all of the law enforcement agencies into a room to talk to Palisadians about what law enforcement could do about homelessness, he was the one who helped us. Some of you who were on the board at the time might remember a meeting where he came to PPCC. We had Rusty Redican, who at the time was our beach detail, just a line item. It was a discretionary line item under Captain Nieto at the time. And I met him then. He was an ally, and he helped us get more LAPD resources. So I gave him a call and I said, what can I do to help you? And he said, well, if you bring 30 people into a room who can talk about what lies ahead, that would be very helpful. So in fact, we did that. I went out and I reached to, many of you probably were some of the people I reached out to. We ended up with a little more than 30 people in a room, but they ended up being what some people loosely called the RIV meetings, R-I-V, because they were held at the Riviera Country Club the first 2 times. But it ended up being a brain trust made up of Palisadians. So it was Palisadians who came into a room and just started talking about what this recovery looks like. And I tell you this to say that that was February. It was just about a month after the fire. Everyone was still shell-shocked. Most people had not yet been in to see the devastation. And it was slow to get, I'm sure it is still slow, to get people to get their heads around the massive loss and destruction in the community and what the rebuilding might look like. So conceptually, before the fire, if there was a street in the Palisades that maybe had 4 homes under construction, it was incredibly inconvenient. And we here at Community Council would hear people talking about, it's super inconvenient. There is an issue with health and safety. How do we get emergency trucks up? How do we get out and go to work? Very inconvenient. If you compound that by the breadth of the loss, you'll begin to get your heads around what it might look like to try to rebuild 5,000 homes, particularly in the Palisades, when there are only 2 or 3 ways in and out of the Palisades, and many of our streets are hillside and they're narrow. One of our major arteries, let's see if any ACE commanders, no. One of our major arteries is Temescal Canyon Road. As you all know, Temescal Canyon Road is currently being used by the Army Corps. It is their staging area for concrete crushing. So some of you have probably seen it. It is an operation that takes up the entire breadth of the street, a huge Temescal Canyon Road. Trucks come in with the concrete and the waste that they pick up from the various lots that they've been tasked to clear. They break it up, they sort it. As you all know, they sort it into the various components. The concrete gets crushed once, crushed again, crushed 3 times. It gets turned down, it comes in big boulders and it gets dwindled down to, I'm told, the size of a baseball. And then that is reused as road base. So it goes under the roads that, the city builds for us. And then the rebars are separated and they're compacted. They go to a different waste site, and all the other ways that they sort waste kind of happens on that street. So that street is not going to be available to us for a long time until the Army Corps is done. And there are still a couple of hundred ROEs that are out there that haven't been brought back. We're told all the time, Sue's told all the time. All of you who are in touch with anybody are told all the time, please tell your neighbors, get those ROEs in. Army Corps is working very hard to finish up and get out of here. And I dare say when that's done, this recovery will begin in earnest. As Tracy said, there are people who are ready to build and there are people who have already broken ground, and I'm sure there will be some. But the crux of this rebuilding will begin when the Army Corps is done and the streets are back and we can move around. And that is where our conversations began. So people at the table, about 100 of them, and there's a website, you can go and see who's been at the table, started to talk about what it looks like to rebuild this massive stock of homes that have been destroyed, and it's about 5,000. And so ideas started being put on the table. Right now, what we've emerged with is a plan that we've sent to the council member's office. She's reviewed it with her staff. They seem to think that it's a good plan. It's a good starting point for what has to become a plan, right? So we are not engineers and we're not builders. I personally wish that the mayor would invest, or the city would invest in maybe a consulting company that's in the business of rebuilding. But until then, it's us and our brain trust. And what our brain trust has come up with is a good basics for a plan for logistics. Today, I had a call with Public Works and LA Sanitation and BOE to see if parts of this plan can be implemented or if they can support parts of this plan. I'm told at every turn that this is a thumbs up. Keep going, keep working on this, because this is the kind of planning that you will need. So to tell you what the plan entails, and it is a draft plan, the reason I'm here is to bring this to you all, not just to the people on this call, but to the entire community, because in the end, anything that we do, anything that's systemic and broad-based is going to involve some inconvenience. And in order to build back this town, there are going to be big decisions that'll have to be made, and Palisadians will have to agree with those. There'll have to be a plan that has a buy-in. So I refer again to the task force on homelessness. Our first day, we brought a plan to the community. It was not well received on day one. We had a lot of community meetings. People had a lot of questions. We attempted to answer those questions. And once that was done, people bought into this idea that we were going to hire service workers, come in and transition people out of homelessness, not just call in the cavalry and move them on. This is kind of the same. I'm asking you all to listen to me here today, and I'll speed it up, I promise, but also go and check out the plan, give us your input, let us, and of course, your council member is the one who's got the ear to the ground, and I know she wants to hear from everybody, get that input back so we can start to see what this plan might look like. And at the same time, city agencies have to come to the table and enable some of these bold ideas to happen. And that, of course, is if this community wants them to happen. So I'm opening my own phone. Okay, seriously. All right, So logistics, daily operations. We have talked about the scale of this reconstruction being immense. We've talked about the number of people and the number of trucks that have to come in and out of the Palisades. As it is now, it's pretty difficult. Once Army Corps leaves and people start to repopulate, there is the issue that we collectively will be rebuilding a town while people repopulate, right? So we're going to have construction trucks coming in and construction workers coming in and going out in deliveries while people are repopulating their homes and trying to live in this community. So one of the things we're talking about is how do we work with the city to create a street overlay so that we can conceptually quantify how much material has to come into this town during the daytime. And so maybe we turn some of these arteries that feed into the Palisades into one-way streets for some hours of the day. So right now, what we've proposed is 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. Or maybe it's 4 to 7, maybe it's 3 to 7, maybe it depends on where the trucks are going. Those areas that have seen the most devastation are not going to be repopulated soon. If they're over 70%, 80, 90% in some areas of the Palisades burnt down, there won't be a lot of repopulation. Maybe we can get the trucks to deliver earlier during the day or later into the night. But the idea is maybe Chautauqua can be one way for some hours in the morning so that the volume of trucks that are delivering material can come up. Maybe the other option is that they go out the other end, down Sunset and out into PCH. Something you all need to think about, something the city has to look at their traffic plan, but some sort of traffic overlay. If you look at the neighborhoods that have been devastated, for example, the Alphabet streets, those streets are narrow. So we talk about what happens if there are two cement trucks trying to go to a build site. Well, they're not going to be able to cross on the same street. So maybe during the day, those streets have to be one way in one direction, delineated, maybe every other street or whatever the case may be. Again, an idea of looking at streets. Every construction site is going to need workers. So there's an idea floating around. Well, one of the ideas that we propose is that maybe workers would want to stay in the Palisades Monday through Friday. Of course, they can be staged in city-owned or county-owned areas. You might think of the parking lot, and then be shuttled up to the locations where they work. The other idea is that people who own lots who are not in a rush to build might be willing to lease their cleared lots to contractors or builders who can keep their workers in the Palisades Monday through Friday. So rebuilding will be more swift, right? These people will be able to go to work earlier, and maybe there can be 2 shifts so homes can be built more quickly. It also streamlines building for the builders. The other thing it does, and these are all ideas that came up from this brain trust. The other thing it does is that those people who are underinsured, who have a gap that they need to fill, this may be a way for them to make income, right? To be able to generate income for that gap that they need to fill. So maybe if they don't need to build for 2 years, they lease their lot, that's income that they can close their gap. The other idea is staging areas throughout the Palisades. Again, this was not, these came from people who've built large scale projects, cities, commercial projects. The idea was, why don't we stage material in the Palisades as a way of A, quicker delivery, and B, keeping prices down, which seemed to be a great idea. And then somebody said, well, why don't we split the Palisades into north and south, or depending how you think of the Palisades, east and west? Because on the south side of Palisades, I think of it as north and south. So on the south, there are the Alphabet streets that have been decimated, but also there is construction that needs to go on in the Huntington. And then in Area 6, we roughly say Area 6. So in the Bluffs have been devastated. So so we're talking about a staging area so that trucks come up Chautauqua, they reach their staging area to be able to service that part of the Palisades. And then on the other end of the Palisades, on the north side, the Marquez Flats have been decimated, and some of the areas there, and also Malibu is going to need some reconstruction. So we've talked about the Malibu feed bin. Someone else had the idea of maybe Los Leones can be a staging area for material. It can be locked very easily, just a gate at the door. Apparently this has been done before. And so staging areas for material, again, so that we can stock material and keep the prices of material stable as people begin to rebuild. The third idea on the table, something we talked today about extensively with the 2 different groups of people, and it does sound like we might be able to float an RFQ to get some information to see if this is feasible. But the third idea on the table is a concrete plant. So instead of having concrete trucks going through LA highways like the 10 and the 405 snaking up Sunset or, clogging up the 10 to get to the Palisades every day for the volume of concrete that we're going to need. The idea is to have a concrete plant temporarily in the Palisades. I learned from Rich Wilkin a few weeks ago that 50 years ago, there was a concrete plant in the Palisades. He unfortunately can't find a picture because his house burned, but apparently it was on the top of Temescal Canyon Road. So I don't know where that might be. I spoke to the city today. I said, if you don't mind, give us a list of properties that you own, city properties that are bigger than an acre, so we can figure out where that might be. But just for you all to know, there was a time when there was a concrete plant in this town. And the idea now is to have a temporary one. I'm told that it will save tens of millions of dollars in fees because of delivery costs that come along with delivering concrete to Pacific Palisades. So those fees would be erased if we had our own concrete plant. And also, I think our neighbors would be happy if we could take that many trucks off the road. So as these conversations evolved, there was someone else at the table who is a green builder, a builder with a smaller carbon footprint. His suggestion was that we could mix our concrete, especially our Palisades concrete, with something called pozzolans. Turns out that pozzolans it's a compound that is found on the west coast of the United States, so easy to find. And it is more resilient to some of the erosive items that are, the erosive compounds that are in the earth after a fire. So after a fire, there are various elements that are in the soil. Those can be very corrosive to concrete. And so we can mix a concrete that is both more fire resilient and more resistant to these corrosive effects. And it would save us money and it would take trucks off the street. So that's a big ask. No one has ever thought of Pacific Palisades as being a concrete town. And, I'm not asking you to do that now, but it might be a temporary fix that becomes necessary. So today we were told that we as a community can run an RFQ. That's a request for information, or an RFI. RFQ is a request for quotes. You all know this better than I do. I have a steep learning curve, but we could have an RFQ where we could, bring concrete makers to the table, tell them exactly what it is we're looking for. How big is it? What kind of volume might we be looking for? What sorts of delivery times? And see if this can be feasible. If it is, that becomes part of the plan for the city to consider. I say all of this to you because I'm sure you're tired of hearing my voice, but for as long as it's us, for as long as it's Palisadians at the table trying to rebuild the Palisades, it's going to have to be a plan that percolates from this community. We have an ally in Tracy, but honestly, Tracy is also going to need us to give her some of the information and the input and the preferences and the tolerance that we're willing to take on as we rebuild this place. And for the most part, I think most people at the table think this is going to take upwards of 5 years. I hate to say it, but upwards of 5 years. So in the end, it's going to be Palisadians standing here continuing to rebuild this town. Most of the lawmakers that are in office will not be there. I can think of one that I suspect will not be there. Hopefully Tracy will by then be a Palisadian, so she'll still be at the table. But it is going to be us. So I suggest you all engage. Please read the plan, send your input, and start to think about what this really is going to look like. It's not just a few houses on your street being rebuilt. It is an entire community with 5,000 homes, and there is some pain to endure around the corner. We just have to choose what it is. That's it. Thank you. Happy to take questions and input.
Yeah, I see a few questions. I'm kind of curious. I'm going to ask one question. What if some people are starting early, like the family that started yesterday, and they already have a contractor, he's already got his cement, he's already got his lumber.
Right.
How does people like that?
So what we're talking about is for the glut, right? And the glut is that middle term. The people who start early, they're going to get their stuff in, their price of materials isn't going to be super high. They've probably already got a plan in place. Their contractor has already solved for some of the things that we're trying to solve for. And the people who potentially wait 9 or 8 or 10 years, they're going to have an okay build too, because again, they're not in the crunch time. I'm really solving for that 7, 5, 6 years in the middle where it's going to be a crunch. Most people are going to be building, and material and people have to come in and out at an uncanny pace on a daily basis. And we are going to have to solve for those perils, because if people hit enough impediments as they build, they will not, right? They will stop. If it's too hard to get your contractor in here and he says to you, this is too hard, my truck's been on the road for 4 hours, forget it, I'm going to the other community where I can make my money. We're going to end up having builds that take 2, 3, 4, 5 years. You all know insurance companies have a finite amount of time during which they will make payouts. For a lot of people, it's 2 or 3 years. So people need to be able to build swiftly. If people get stuck in the middle of their rebuild, we're going to have people abandoning half-built homes across the Palisades, potentially leaving like the frame up and saying, you know what, I can't complete this. So our coalition is trying to solve for the glut, for lack of a better word, for that period of time where the most amount of people are going to be building and the most number of impediments might discourage people from staying the course.
Okay, we have a few questions. I'm going to start with Jenny. Jenny, go for it.
Well, Maryam, you just touched on this, but I think a lot of people, including myself, are under pressure. Well, I don't know if it's real pressure from insurance companies that are saying 2 years, even though I feel like it should be 3 years based on the insurance code, but I can't really understand really what even the, maybe other people have better luck figuring out what insurance companies really do. And I think part of this, your conversation with all the people that are involved, is how are we going to make insurance companies give ourselves more time, because we can't all do this at one time. It's just not, it's better. I think what you're saying is, it sounds like you're talking about a staged approach, and there may be people who can't wait, and there may be people who are willing to wait if they could get that extra time for their insurance company. So somewhere that has to be factored in.
Yep. So I agree. So one of the areas where our little coalition is planning to do some work is insurance, because that's huge. So something I didn't mention is that I've spoken to the planning department and talked about having the planning department give Palisadians who put in for a permit a little bit of a cheat sheet. Sorry, this is a little digression, but I'll get back to you, Jenny. A little bit of a cheat sheet so that people can see what elements they need to incorporate into their reconstruction to make their homes fire resilient and per code, right? So modern code on fire resiliency is totally different than it was 20 years ago. And so give people who are not builders, lay people, the ability to look on a list and say, oh, okay, here are 30 items I can incorporate into my home. If I incorporate 10 of them, I can be insured, or I will be up to code, and they can choose from these items. So on the insurance issue, on the back end, after we build our homes, we actually have to be insured. And so we're trying to bring people to the table. I've reached out to Ben Allen and Jackie Irwin, right? There are representatives at the state. I've asked them to bring the insurance companies to the table, Jenny, for that very reason, because we have a lot of insurance questions. One of them is, we're not going to build 5,000 homes inside of 2 or 3 years. So I've been told that if you begin your process and you go to your insurance company and say, I need more time, but I have begun the process, they do extend the time. I do not know where you need to be in that process or how much time they extend. But, our recovery coalition, I keep saying our because it's somewhat loose at the moment, but our recovery coalition, this group of people, we're going to have Ben Allen talk to us or come and speak to the community on April 15th, Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock down in Rustic Canyon. I've asked them to bring the insurance commissioner, Jenny, for that very reason, because they might not have answers for us now. Maybe they haven't faced a community that's had 5,000 homes they have to rebuild in 2 years, but we're asking them to start thinking about some of our issues and beginning to legislate to resolve them. And one of them, I think, is going to have to be, how do we stagger the rebuilding of 5,000 homes in 90272?
Okay, thank you, Maryam. I'm just going to move on because we have a couple more questions. Chris Spitz.
Yeah. Hey, Maryam, thank you so much. Is your website, somebody wrote in the chat your website name, is it palirecovery.org? Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Pali Recovery. Okay. And there's also some questions about who is a member of the Pali Recovery Coalition. Is that on your website? Who contributed to the plan? That kind of thing. Because a lot of us, including myself, have questions about who's involved. Thank you.
Yeah. I didn't see it in the chat, but yes, the website is up. The roster that you'll see on the website is all the people who have been to meetings, invited to come to the meetings, and we've had 4. So at some point or another have come and have, had a hand in this conversation. This conversation has been going on since the 11th of February. through 4 meetings. And pretty quickly after the first meeting, I mean, by the end of that first meeting, it became obvious that we were focusing on a logistics plan. The idea of the cement plant came up that first day. Oh, the lumber yard, somebody said, hey, we should have a lumber yard or just other building materials. That emerged the very first day. So everybody who's been at the table and part of the conversation since then has basically been talking about this logistics plan, loosely termed logistics plan. So if you look at the roster, you'll see all the people I've invited. Most of you have been invited, to come and be part of the conversation. So it's not structured like PPCC. I can't tell you there are members. Maybe one day we'll get there. But right now it's a table set for Palisadians to come and talk about this one thing, which is the elephant in our collective room. We need to rebuild an entire community. So it's just a table I've set. I probably learned from you, but it was, it opened up because somebody said I need 30 people in a room, and then it just grew from there.
Okay, thank you. Someone named Angela, I don't know your last name, Angela, but you have your hand up. Angela's iPhone, you're on mute. Okay, I don't know about Angela. We did have Reza. Reza had a question, but I don't see your hand anymore. Reza, do you still have a question?
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading the website, I'm learning more. So I'm formulating my question. How about we let Lori go and then I'll ask.
Okay, that's fine. Lori, go for it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Miriam. That was great. I agree with so many of those things. I just wanted to say to you that someone reached out in the community today. They had heard that potentially maybe Gelson's might be a site for the cement. And they were really concerned. There's people that live right there. Yeah, in the condos. Yeah, go ahead. Do you want to talk to that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's not. Nothing is a site for anything yet. This has not gone anywhere. You guys are it. The only other person who's seen this is pretty much Tracy Park. You're it. So nothing is happening until this community talks about it. There is no cement plant in the works. It's literally an idea on a piece of paper saying, hey, are we there? Are we at the point where we need to do that? I will say that from what I understand, and I may not understand exactly correctly. But from what I understand, Anna Walt is speaking with Ralph's because potentially a lumber yard might make more sense there, since Anna Walt is a lumber company and they're already up and running. So that is what I've heard. I heard that from a broker of real estate who apparently reached out, spoke to the Ralph's people to see if they'd be willing to be a staging area or if they wanted to rebuild quickly. And the information that came back to me was that Anna Walt had already reached out to them. No concrete plant is in the works. I don't have the power to do that. I would not be able to do that. So this is just a conversation.
Perfect. Thanks, Miriam. That's great.
Okay, Diane, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Who on this get-together is representing those homeowners who were lucky enough to survive? We feel terrible for what has happened, but we too would like to have a seat at the table because what happens affects us too. And so I'd like to know who's the representative for those people who are back living in the Palisades in their homes on this committee to rebuild 5,000 homes in 5 years.
Well, I am. My home is still standing, and maybe it's hard to believe, but homes with people with homes standing have a whole lot of issues, many complications, lots to think about. We're going to be living here while this is happening. So, Diane, I am. But I can poll the people on that roster and see how many of them have homes standing. Many of them probably do. And some of them were at the very beginning of the conversation when they were talking about, this was like February. Some of them were saying, Maryam, we want to move back, make it so we can move back. And so part of the conversation was, how do we build back a town where people are living? So we're concentrating some of the delivery stuff and one-way street stuff to those areas that are more than 90% burned because we assume fewer people are living there. That will change, right? Once people begin to build their homes, they're going to start to live there. It's constantly a part of the conversations. I mean, who am I? I'm another Palisadian like you guys. Every time you guys have conversations, you're probably talking about, what do we do to be able to build alongside our friends and our neighbors who are repopulating? So Diane, that is very much at the table. I hate to say it. I think it's going to be super duper inconvenient. I am one of those people who wonders if my child is going to live in a community where 10 years from now, they're going to tell me, you know, he's got some condition and it was because I moved him back into the Palisades. Very difficult questions. I cannot answer them, but there are people at the table and we will ask those questions for as long as we can and try to.
Okay. Thanks, Miriam. Okay, I'm gonna, two more questions. I've got Angela, and then after Angela, Reza.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I wasn't able to come on earlier. I had to deal with the call. I have a question because I have seen all over Instagram evaluations for contractors about investing in rebuilding in the Palisades, and that it would not be profitable for them, that they would lose 20% of whatever they invested in there. And I just wanted to get kind of a reading from all of you. Is this just false media, or is this something, I'm assuming a lot of people have attempted to sell their lots because there's just so much to rebuild. Believe me, we know about the building process. So I just want to check in and see where everybody is with that.
I think there's a lot of guessing going on. It's my personal belief. Miriam, do you have another answer?
I don't, I agree. There are, Sue, maybe you know, upwards of 150 lots for sale in the Palisades right now. I
Yeah.
have no doubt. I mean, I'm just guessing, but I have no doubt that this is a place where many people are circling for opportunity. No doubt about it. But it's also a place where people have lost their homes. They've lost their nest eggs. They've lost, you know, some people who own their homes for a very long time didn't potentially have mortgages. If you don't have a bank asking you to make sure you update your insurance policy, maybe they didn't have insurance. So they find themselves in very perilous waters. Maybe they have to list. I know there are developers out there who are looking for blocks, right? They can buy up maybe 10 homes so they can streamline. Everything that we're trying to do is to make sure we can make it possible for a Palisadian to build back a home in the Palisades. Tracy and I have talked about how do we make it easier for people to be able to get architectural plans. Maybe somebody can't go out and get themselves an architect to the tune of, I don't know how many thousands of dollars, but maybe we can make a pool of architectural plans available that people can tweak. So I hear you. I think there's a lot of speculation out there, but what can we do other than to do our very best to make sure we can get as many Palisadians back in the Palisades as possible?
Maybe Reza can answer that question. He's going to be up next.
Yeah, Reza. And then maybe I'll just take one more because we have to move on. But Reza, go for it.
Okay, it's a lot, but I'll try to be brief. I mean, Maryam, this is an amazing start.
Yes.
I'm boots on the ground every day right now in the Palisades, and I'm already experiencing the headache. Logistics is the name of the game for everyone. I'm less worried about materials, and I'm less worried about labor. Logistics. It's about the logistics. It's about getting in and getting out of the Palisades.
Right.
It's about having workers be able to come in, get the work done, and then go home. And like we just heard, it's important to also respect our neighbors. You know, I've been building in the Palisades for 15 years, and I've built on some of the tightest streets. My biggest feedback is that a lot of this can be addressed with the right corporate partnerships. And a lot of it can be taken care of if we reach out to the bigger companies. And they are, for all intents and purposes, ready to help, you know, regardless of whatever's going on nationally. My biggest concern, and Sue and you and the board can decide, I would love to, with other builders, we've been talking, we'd like to provide some sort of form of information at some point, because just so people understand what it takes to build a house, even on the paperwork side, and just make sure people understand what kind of contracts. Like, for example, I can tell you on Lombard Street in the Bluffs, a family was doing private debris removal. They paid a 20 grand deposit, and the contractor disappeared for 2 weeks. You know, in state of California law, you're not authorized to pay more than you're not required to pay more than $1,000. So it's this kind of information that's really important. Even before you sign the contract with a contractor, you know this kind of information to protect yourself. And I think as someone who was raised in the Palisades, who has blessed enough to be able to work in the Palisades, I think it's really important to educate a lot of our neighbors on how to protect themselves when they sign these agreements. And so that they know there's the mechanical lien process. I won't go into it, Sue. But I'll wrap up with just saying, like, there is a lot. There is a lot about going underground too, and electricity and having the right plans. LADWP has a lot of questions they have to answer. And right now, the last thing I'll leave you with is, and I won't blame Army Corps, but Swarthmore has a crater on it, you know, the size of a little asteroid. And, you know, for us as builders, we take such good care of the street when we get an excavator delivered. And I know it's trying to get the street cleaned up, but Swarthmore, Aroost between Earlham and DePaul has a big crater on it. I'll email you about it later. But, you know, these excavators are just tearing up our streets right now. And everyone's just like, yeah, let's get the neighborhood clean, but at what cost? So there's a lot to talk about, and I'm happy to be part of the conversation, Maryam.
Yeah, and we can talk at
Thank you,
further
Reza.
meetings too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Thank
thank you
you.
for starting this. This is wonderful.
Thank you, Reza.
Okay, Courtney, you're gonna be our last question.
Okay, this isn't necessarily related to right now, but just for people to be thinking about, I wanted to highlight Sue Pascoe's article letting people know that you should check your voter registration because, and there's a link on her Circling the News article. I forget which it was dated. So if you wouldn't mind putting it in the chat, what date that article was. But even people that didn't change their addresses with the DMV or change utilities or anything like that, automatically their voter registrations were changed to where they're living currently. And I'm in a city where I'm no longer able to vote in the city of Los Angeles. So we still want to be Palisadians. So we have to figure out a way to still be voting in the Palisades. And every single person I sent that article to, all of their registrations were changed without their knowledge at all.
Okay, we'll send out that
Yeah,
information.
could I
with the
just say
MailChimp.
that I've heard about that and maybe PPCC can send out some information about it. Let's talk about it
Yeah,
offline.
we'll
Yeah.
definitely do that.
Thank you, Sue Pascoe, for letting us know. It was very helpful.
Okay, now I believe that we have our special guest from Haggerty. Haggerty is a consulting group that the mayor has hired. And we have tonight Harrison Newton. I'm not sure about Tracy. Did Tracy ever make it, Harrison?
Sorry, we're having some technical difficulties joining, so I don't believe she's going to be able to be
Okay.
with us tonight.
Okay, so it's all on you, Harrison.
I understand. I
Welcome.
understand.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come on and give a presentation. I think everybody would like to know what your mission statement is and how you guys are going about what you're doing.
Yeah, I'd love to speak to that. And, I just want to start by expressing a lot of, just sympathy and one, gratitude for the invitation to be here tonight. A lot has been, I think experienced. I heard so much in the comments, in the questions even, about the loss that your community has had. And so, we are here to work in support of the Emergency Management Department at the city. In the recovery, it's a tremendous burden to run a recovery after a disaster so significant. And so we're really helping with all functions of that process and the city's ability to lead that process. And so that's the task that we've been given by the mayor. And so I have a presentation. I have some slides I'd like to go over that speak to kind of our organization's principles in recovery, what we think is important, what we found is important. Our firm works with communities on their worst day all across the country and has for years, every disaster since 2011. And, so I just want to start by saying that, I think part of, the journey of communities after disaster is really to kind of do exactly what you're doing here, which is come together and think about how are you going to rebuild the community in a way that it's livable for people who are there, that it supports and sustains, bringing back the community character that's so important. And that's a huge job and a huge lift. So it's incredible that you have so many people here that are engaged and active in the planning piece, and thoughtful. And we're happy to be here in support of that. So let me go ahead and try to share my screen for a moment.
You can do that.
Okay, hopefully you're seeing my screen here.
Yes, we're seeing it.
Okay. Great. Okay. So, one of the things that I think that you're experiencing here, and that we always try to set the stage for when we talk about recovery is how recovery looks in communities. And every single recovery is different, but at the same time, there are certain trends in terms of timing and the kind of work that needs to happen. So, we have a disaster, we have that short-term recovery piece where really, response is still active and you're really trying to still conduct life safety missions. You're trying to save what can still be saved, and you're trying to make sure people can really survive in the places they are in their homes. And you're beginning to think about, bringing the community back online, power, water, and those kinds of things. The intermediate piece, you see more complex missions, the debris removal, temporary housing, infrastructure rebuild begins, and this long-term piece. And this is really challenging for communities to have the capacity to do it. It's really challenging for governments to have the capacity to do it, because in addition to this process, you're still running a city, you're still running a county, you're still running the state. So whatever scale the disaster is at, it's an all hands on deck kind of moment. There can't be enough resources. You need the government to be fully focused. You need the community to come together in a powerful way. You need philanthropy. You need business. And so there's a lot of consideration. I'm just setting the stage for that. I think the fact that there's a lot of consideration for what is an integrated process that can over time sustain all of those players to be working in Congress efficiently and effectively together. That is very important. It's key to recovery. And we understand that people's lives are on the line, their lives, livelihoods, their ability to live with their children and community, to get back to school, to do all the functions that are so important. So that vision for integration for a long-term recovery is very, very key. And that is part of, I think there's been a lot of question as to what Hagerty is here to support. That is a piece we're here to support. And we've heard from the city that there's an understanding that there needs to be asset and investment and resource around the long-term recovery piece. But it's also true that short-term and intermediate piece is equally as important, because people are trying to live in the community as it's brought back. Hagerty's also working on that front. And I'm going to go over a little bit about that. So the recovery support functions, and that's just a little bit of a wonky name for how can government work in a way that is interactive, effective, accountable, and efficient. And it's not the way that government works every day. In a recovery, you need agencies to synergize in a way that usually is, it has to be more sustained, and it has to be more connective than it often has to be. And so what doctrine has said, FEMA doctrine and years of experience, and certainly our experience in the field has held, that government has to kind of come together in a special way. You have to have kind of task forces, but even more deeply than task force, you think about task forces, you think about groups around a table that are working kind of in a collaborative fashion, and that's great. But you also have to have people who can access the information at those tables and put it into an actionable form for others to digest it, to understand that KPIs are being met, that new KPIs are being set and communicated for those groups. So you can see there's kind of a back and forth that must occur across all of these different fronts. And so that structure is a structure that LA has in place now, and Hagerty is supporting that piece in every one of these organizational task forces. And some of these boxes, or I guess some of these shapes, represent even more than one task force, but are actually a conglomeration of several different task forces that all work in that area. So if you look at natural and cultural resources, health and social services, or infrastructure systems, we're raising up that structure within government and helping support from a program management piece how that work is happening within government that is meant to be, and its only purpose is to be responsive to your needs. And those needs, as you've spoken them tonight, are things I'm going to take right back to this structure. The things that you've expressed, the concerns that you have, the immediate needs that you talked about, those are all things that this structure is meant to be responsive to. Maybe I'll just take one more moment to say that, for government, it represents a tremendous amount, and I don't mean to say, I would just say that it takes a tremendous amount of work and focus and time. We've clearly seen that at Emergency Management Department, working really around the clock to try to affect different elements of recovery. And so, that's work that's happening every day. So I just wanted to take one more moment to reiterate that, there's a lot that has been studied about disaster recovery. And certainly, part of our approach is to support the understanding of what the best practices are so they can be implemented here. I'll talk about it a little bit later, but there's always a bigger story to recovery. Recovery is a chance to become more resilient to the next disaster. And we never, even as we're experiencing a disaster, even as we're experiencing a recovery, it's always not pleasant to think about the fact that there's going to be another disaster. Sometimes in the communities that I've worked in, that next disaster hits even while we're still recovering from a disaster. And so we don't even get a chance to fully recover before we're dealing with another disaster, sometimes of a different type. And so these structures are important, and the learning about recovery is very important because it informs how we can be ready for the numerous different things, unexpected, that can happen even as we're doing this recovery process. One of the things that we really believe in around recovery is that thinking about resilience. Resilience being, it's the individuals, institutions, businesses, and systems, their ability to withstand and recover no matter what the disruptions are or disasters experienced. One of the things that we've learned being on the ground in the Palisades is that fire risk is there. There are other risks. And anytime, and there's other hazards, right? There's other things that we know can happen in the Palisades that are, harmful to life and lifestyle. And so this is an opportunity to even think largely, in a larger way, about the Palisades and what is the future for the Palisades that really means that it's not just wildfire that you're more resilient to, but you're becoming more resilient to other kinds of hazards that are important in your community to consider. The city has a mitigation plan. It has a number of projects that have been identified that would reduce risk on key fronts. And so, what communities have done across the nation is take the recovery moment to crack open that plan, because there's lots of good projects in there that have not been funded. And sometimes around recovery, there's the opportunity to fund those. And so this longer view becomes important. I want to say that none of that comes at the expense of the short and immediate term. I can't stress that enough, that the complexity of the moment is you have to kind of do both things. The long term and the short immediate term are both critically important. So communities have chosen around the country to do structured approaches to long-term and intermediate-term recovery. And I just kind of want to go over what we think some of the reasons are that that has been an approach, and it's generally speaking the approach that we support and we come into communities to support. So, I think this conversation actually is just a beautiful example of the need for stakeholder consensus. And, I see Maryam and others doing it so wonderfully on this call. There are a lot of people with a lot of expertise levels and a lot of personal resources and assets. And also they're residents who just know their needs better than anyone else and know the community they love better than anybody else. And so having a place to come together and be able to talk openly about that is just very important. And part of how you work in a responsible and accountable way is to kind of have community able to stage and come together. And when you can, to provide resources to support that happening. I know a lot of people on this call are spending their own time and their own resource to be here. And so, communities looking at how can we make that sustainable is certainly a question. Innovation, leveraging experts in local universities. You've got certainly in California a lot of asset in that space. Financing the philanthropy piece and charitable giving and those dollars that can really help you extend projects that you prioritize. Community character, that's something we've heard since day one on the ground is, people have a vision for what makes the Palisades special and a wonderful place to live. And if you can't preserve that in the rebuild, that's tragic.
Thank you.
The structure, no single group can do it alone. I think Maryam talked well about the need for experts and expert assistance. That's certainly something we believe in as well, that you're going to need business and economic expertise. You're going to need infrastructure expertise. You're going to need expertise of all kinds. On every call that we take part in, we hear that across those RSF functions, those groups, those task force subject areas, there are concerns across all of those areas. Some of them are social concerns. Some of them are about policy, insurance, and other areas. There's a need for expertise in all those areas. So the structure that can really, integrate that, bring that together is important. And of course, the economy, it's often important, community to think about how to activate economic regrowth and rebuilding to the extent that businesses close, to the extent that businesses are having hardship. There has to be a piece that is focused on how to, either revitalize or bring back business and business corridors. And then lastly, wildfire resistance. As I was talking about, disaster can hit. One of the things that I think is very powerful about the long-term piece is that ideally, Palisades recovery and particularly long-term recovery should be activating this dynamic where you can see over time, like I shared that graphic that expresses, the recovery timeframes, and the hills are higher on the left. And over time, if you're becoming more resilient after each disaster, what you would expect is the hills shrink and the time for recovery shrinks because your resilience to disaster has grown. Your policies have become more effective. Your infrastructure has become more resilient. Even sometimes your social structures have been invested in a particular way. And so the next disaster doesn't hit as hard. And so I think that is one of the best things that you can expect out of recovery, is not only to bring back your community, but to bring it back in a way that your children, their children are living in a Palisades that's even more resilient to disaster. So those are some of the principles that I think undergird our understanding of what's important in communities to achieve. We're working every day alongside EMD, right alongside EMD and all of the agencies that are aligned to be responsive to the needs for recovery. And I think I'll end it by saying we're in conversation and active discussions around an approach to the long-term piece. I think it was always very important that we wanted to be engaged in the listening aspect and understanding aspect, before determining that there was just some model that should be deployed. That being said, we're working with the city partners, and I want to stress that, we're here to work in support of the emergency management department. And so we really, it's really important for us to want to, make sure that we're aligned. So the information that we share is really, I think, represents the vision that the mayor has. And so, I think we want to be responsive to questions. I think that what we're going to try to do is we'd love to take your questions back. We want to make sure that we kind of work with our city partners to formulate the right, correct answers, thorough answers to those questions, because we really want to make sure that we're aligned. I think, information that's not completely, able to have that moment of analysis and thorough response doesn't help anybody. So we really want to make sure that we take your questions back and have the chance to be thoughtful about them and thorough with them. We do very much appreciate this convening. We really appreciate being invited. I hope what I've shared is helpful, but we expect to be, working in support of EMD and really hoping to bring asset and resource and support to the process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Harrison. I have just a couple questions for you, and then I see some other hands. One, people are wanting to know if you could please put your email in the chat. And secondly, we'd like to have your presentation, if possible, sent to us at the community council so that we can then get it sent out to anyone who's here or anyone else who couldn't make it tonight. So let me know about that. And one thing I would love for you to do, because I know a lot of people have a question about Hagerty being based in another part of the country. It's my understanding, and you tell me if I'm wrong, that you might be based in another part of the country, but the disasters that you go to and that you help with are also all over the country, pretty much everywhere. And are you guys taking your experiences that you've had with other disasters and bringing that experience here and helping our local government to answer questions and figure out how to proceed based on what you've done in the other disasters?
So I will I'll answer that question. And I see other hands going up, and I want to say that the other questions, please, we'll capture those, and we'll make sure to give a thorough answer to those. Your question, I think, is central to what I was hoping to present. So I will go ahead and answer it. So yes, our firm, though based in Illinois, works with communities across the country every day. After disaster, before disaster, in numerous ways to support communities, support emergency managers, support businesses. And so in that work, we experience a lot alongside community. I think it is hugely helpful. It's tragic too, right? Because every time you're in a disaster, that's someone's life, that's someone's property, that's someone's future. But it's more incumbent to try to take those experiences and make sure you leverage whatever you learned, whatever was experienced there in another setting, because there is great transference. And though communities are unique and individual, there still are lessons learned, and we never want to have to do that over and over again. So as we're working alongside emergency managers in the emergency management department every day, helping to coordinate with government agencies, helping to pull together government agencies to be accountable and responsible with the needs that we're hearing in community, we're informing that with a sense of the best practices, how other communities have achieved outcomes, and really bringing that to bear. And maybe to your last point, wildfire certainly is a unique kind of disaster. Hagerty has worked in that space as well. But, you know, it's also true that even in other kinds of disasters, there's similar issues that come up, insurance issues, issues around policy. And so those are also areas where, you know, our firm has a great deal of experience. And certainly I think that's part of the vision that we would be supporting in that way. So once again, I really appreciate the chance to be here. Thank you very much. You know, we look forward to being able to support the effort.
Of course, we're happy to have you. You have time for a few questions?
So I think what we want to do is capture the questions, and then we want to be able to be responsive in a thorough fashion. So we're going to take those questions back and field them that way, where we're able to be interactive with our city partners who really are, you know, who we're tasked with supporting. We want to make sure to be aligned in the answers we provide.
Okay, well, we have a couple hands up. I mean, I think
I understand.
if you can let us have your email, people can send you questions that you can take back. And
I will
you,
make sure to provide my contact. Absolutely.
okay. Leanne, did you have a question? Leanne Daly?
Yeah, I sure do. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
First of all, Keith, thank you so much for coming. You know, I'm sure it's a little scary to sit in front of a Zoom full of people like us because we're all completely vulnerable and destabilized in a way that is, you know, it's hard. It's hard for all of us because we are also a lot of us used to having a lot of agency. And with great regard and respect for the origins of your company and the capabilities that you've described today, it feels extremely generic. And there is a trust problem between the people on this Zoom call and the people of the Palisades and the city. And I think that for me, my biggest issue has to do with public health and the lack of response and the lack of timely response. Because the people who are putting their heart and soul, like Maryam, into this are concerned about it. And it's for many of us, our you know, our lives are here and our future wealth for our kids exists in this community, both in terms of culture and in terms of housing and all that kind of good stuff. So I guess for me, it's kind of like you need to know that we have a trust issue with the people who are paying you. Okay, we have a trust issue. It's our money, and they're distributing it to you guys on our behalf. But we have a trust issue, and it's huge. And you know, it's what's being done around public health and what's being done around infrastructure. Those are the two big questions we have. And we have no answer, and we have no leadership. And you guys are in the middle of it. So how do you navigate that dilemma, Keith?
It's Harrison.
I'm sorry, Harrison. I apologize. I jumped in often on this call. Harrison,
Okay.
I apologize. I get called Luann all the time. So
That's okay. I think Harrison got your message. So I think we're good. I'd like to take a question from Rob Weber.
I'd love to have an answer to that question from at some point. Okay.
Okay.
It's not a theoretical. It's a really concrete question.
Okay. Rob?
Hi, Harrison. Thank you for coming. I mirror what Leanne just said. And again, I'll be candid with you because I think candidness is important at this point. I think what the community is looking for now more than anything is doers and action, as opposed to words of support and standing shoulder to shoulder with you and will be with you every step of the way. We need some action, and we've asked our government for some action, and our city government hasn't provided a lot of it, to be honest. You want to see an example of action today, which hasn't been mentioned on this call, but I'll share it with everybody because it's wonderful. The coach of the Lakers, JJ Redick, and a number of families in the community, along with Rick Caruso at Steadfast, announced today that they're donating 8 figures to fix the rec center, get that up as quickly as possible, and they want to do it all themselves, and they just need the city to get out of the way. It's fantastic, and it's an example of doing. So, you know, my questions for you are, what exactly is Haggerty doing? It wasn't clear to me from your presentation if your most important function is to simply bring thoughts and desires of the community, synthesize them, and get them to the government. Fine. My question would be, who in the community, who among the residents have you actually spoken with? Who do you intend to speak with? And what's your deliverable going to be? So those are questions they ask that you take back. And one more thing that I think would provide the transparency that Leanne and others are asking about is, tell us how much you're getting paid. You know, a lot of people have asked that. We haven't gotten an answer, and taxpayers don't like hearing that. So I do hope that you can help. You got 200 people on the Zoom who are willing to help, and thousands more in the community who I guarantee will talk your ear off in terms of what you need. So good luck. But I hope that you transform what you hear into some action really quickly. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it. Dave Howard. Dave, we can't hear you. You might be on mute.
I just wanted to, a couple things. One, first of all, I want to thank Maryam for all the work she's put in, because I think we all are a debt of gratitude. And I know from past episodes of working with her that there's nobody better representing us. So thank you for that. In regards to Haggerty, all due respect, Harrison, I'm angry, really angry, because I spent 25 minutes listening to you speak, and I don't know what you said.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And it's not to rip you or go, but you got to start providing answers. And when you tell us you're aligned with the mayor's office, that's a problem, because she has not been there for us before the fire, and she's not here for us right now. So the lip service and the holding hands and the kumbaya, it's over. It's over now. You got to start producing. $10 million, $10 million, pay me $10 million and I'll do exactly what you just did. Say nothing. Okay, I'm emotional. I'm sorry, but I am fired up. This is not okay. This is not okay. Tell us what you're doing, where the money's going, and how it's being spent. Concrete items of what you're doing to get this fixed, because I didn't hear a thing. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Kimberly?
Thank you. Echoing everybody else's concerns, I was at the ad hoc meeting where I heard you first present what was also not very much substantive information. This was better with your whiteboards and your slides and everything else, so I appreciate the effort. Can you give me a concrete example of something you did in a prior disaster, such as Lahaina or Paradise or wherever you guys go to do this, that is not just another layer of bureaucracy? Because that's what it feels like at the moment. I'm looking for a concrete example of something that you did that moved things forward and moved the needle. And I'd appreciate hearing it now, not later.
Okay, take that back, Harrison, and respond at some point.
Hello?
Yeah. You know, I don't mean to be disrespectful, and I do intend to provide that information. We also have a website that has a lot of examples of our work. You know, I want
I mean,
to
off the top of your head, just something that you did. I mean, it's got to be a memorable moment for you if this is what you specialize in.
Sure. You know, so I mean, I think that, you know, I wanna go down that road. You know, every community that we work in, their recovery and what we do with them is kind of unique.
Okay, just one thing though. Just one thing.
Okay. So, you know, in communities we've worked in where we've worked on long-term recovery, we've done work to make sure that loan processing is faster and more effective and more communicated to communities. we've made, well, see, so if I give an example, apologies, but if I give an example, I could give, I mean, this is literally what we do all day, every day. So when you talk about opt-in and opt-out processes and making sure the community is aware of those and trying to leverage all the assets to making sure that as many people can go through that process as they can, those are all things we're supporting. So I would really suggest that, you know, in this case, almost everything that is happening when there's augmentation support, it's happening with the augmentation support. That's the point of it. And we're trying to
I
make
don't
those
know
things
what that
happen
means. I
faster.
don't know
I
what,
don't even know, what is augmentation support?
I
What
don't
is
know
It
that?
what that,
means, it just means more people working on the
Well-
recovery every day, so that the missions and the work of the recovery can happen more fast, can happen more effectively and efficiently. So you're bringing more people to bear so that they're less thinly stretched and you're achieving work faster. And it's on every front. So all of the things that you're concerned about and that you're sharing about are things that we take to heart as our mission to help support the responsiveness to. And so, I mean, I really, that is, I mean, we certainly can work at that question of a bunch of examples, but I do just, you know, I'm trying to be as respectful as I can, but I also want to just make it very clear that, you know, that is like when you're talking about things that are important and essential to happen in recovery that you're expecting the government to be responsive on, the response that you're looking for, we are a part of providing. So
okay, so what you're saying is you're sort of giving them a push in the butt to like get them going on these issues and make sure you're sort of covering those bases because they are stretched so thin? Is that kind of what I'm taking away a little bit?
and so I think it's very common in communities that when the disaster happens, it's a huge drain on resources. It's a huge,
True.
because your expectation for responsiveness is so great, and there's still all the normal 9 to 5 activities that occur.
Got it. That makes sense.
That it makes sense to bring in other people who can take on those jobs and take on those roles so that responsiveness can happen, but then all the normal things that you expect government to be responsive to can also happen.
Okay, that makes sense. I get that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Jessica and Maryam, and then I think we're gonna have to move on.
So thank you for showing up tonight. And I told you before that you were what you were dealing with in the Pacific Palisades, and they definitely delivered tonight. It seems evident right now for the community that you know, our mayor was looking for additional support and went out and got support. And truthfully, what has happened here is that we in the Pacific Palisades have incredibly dynamic, smart, and vibrant and active people in this community who have put their heart and soul into rebuilding this community already. And we can do better than anything that your company could possibly provide us. And I think that if we were to take a vote on this tonight, we would get a majority of people saying that we probably the majority of us believe that we can do better. And what Maryam has worked with a lot of leaders in the community already believe so. We do need some leadership. Obviously, our mayor needs support. I think Maryam is on this call and she's hearing everything that we're saying here. And I trust that she will bring this back to Mayor Bass and let her know what this community needs and wants. I feel for you having to show up in such a dynamic community. I doubt you run into many communities in the United States as incredibly skilled as this community is and as passionate. We are a very connected and unified small unit, and we have created magic before and we plan on doing it again, and we need rapid responses, and we have created them already. And thank you, Maryam, for leading the way. And thank you for each and every one of you on this call for everything that you have done for the community. Let's keep working, moving forward, and removing any barriers to building this community the way we see fit. And again, Harrison, thank you for being brave and for showing up and doing your absolute best.
Thanks, Jessica. Okay, I am gonna add 2 more. I've got Cindy Simon has a question and Sue Pasco, and then we really do need to move on.
Okay, I'll be
Hi,
quick.
thank you. I have more of a comment than a question. And Harrison, I think that's something I would advise you to take back to your committee, is that you need to fine tune your presentation, because honestly, I did not understand one thing that you said. And I listened very closely. I heard a lot of sound bites. I heard a lot of marketing terminology. But if you were to ask me what you do and what your company does and what they're going to do for the Palisades, I have no idea what that is. So you need to go back and rewrite your speech and tell the people who you talk to next what your job is and what your company does for them.
Okay, thank you. Sue Pasco.
Hi, just verifying that your company is making 10 million from the city of Los Angeles for this contract.
I don't think that's for sure.
I can answer.
Can we get back to you on that, Sue?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. Maryam?
So, Harrison, hi. I've seen you now in a couple of fora where Palisadians have been, and each time they ask you the same question, they say, "What are you doing here?" And each time you give them an answer, everyone still walks away a little bit like deer in headlights, and they say, "Well, wait a minute, hold on, what did they do?" So in the beginning, and I think you guys have been here since February. In the beginning, everyone thought, well, you know, it's a big project. They're just getting their hands around it. We're going to start to understand soon. Now it's 90 days out. As Jessica and other people have said, there have been various organizations, groups of Palisadians who've come together, who found solutions to various things. There are people who are launching communication platforms. We're trying to address logistics issues. Other people are doing other things. And still, when we ask Haggerty, and we know it's not you, Harrison, honestly, we just want you to take this back. Still, when we ask Haggerty what they do, we seem to get a non-answer. Literally, no one on this call seems to be able to, regurgitate back what you said in concrete terms. So we're at a point where I think the community has understood that there's $10 million on the table for Haggerty. They might not be paying it out. As I understand, it's a menu of items and it sort of depends what you engage in. But there's $10 million somewhere that's been offered in a pot to a consultant to help us. And I think we're at the point where we want to say, if we can help ourselves, maybe some of that money can be allocated to our thoughts and the ways that we may define help, or, where we might be able to identify places where money can be spent to help our recovery along. So if you could take that up, I mean, either Haggerty has a plan and there's something that you can do and it's concrete and tangible and we can begin to understand what it is, or we're doing okay on our own, just give us some support, give us a little bit of money, we can figure out how to solve some problems. And maybe we reach out to you when we hit a wall and we need help. Sorry, you guys, I'm going to stop in a second, but you said one of the things that you guys do is advocate. You help us reach out to leaders and get them to do things. PPCC has been doing that for 50 years. You would not believe how well we do it. So this might just be that community where you guys need to look at that menu of items and figure out precious few of them that can apply, and then just apply it, please. That's it.
Ditto.
Sorry.
Ditto.
Okay. Thank you so much, Harrison. I really appreciate you coming tonight. Really do. And tell Tracy we're sorry we missed her. Not Tracy Park. Haggerty's Tracy. We're going to move on now, try and get through more of the agenda, and I'm going to call